As Cardinal Brady fights for his survival, Archbishop Diarmuid Martin calls for total disclosure. Hello there. Well, later on, the worrying tale of our zombie hotels. Littered all over this country and funded by very generous tax breaks for developers. We'll be looking at how these hotels are killing the industry and could end up costing us a packet. First though, tonight, just when you thought things couldn't possibly get any worse for the Catholic Church here in Ireland, a major scandal engulfs its most senior cleric. At the moment, Cardinal Brady is fighting for his survival following the weekend revelations of his involvement in the notorious case of the paedophile priest, Father Brendan Smith. The Cardinal said that it was 35 years ago and he did nothing wrong. Critics say his behaviour permitted Brendan Smith to carry on abusing children for another 18 years, and that the oath of secrecy sought from the children was truly pernicious. Later we'll be hearing from, among others, Archbishop Diarmuid Martin. First, though, Una Smith has this report.
Father Brendan Smith was one of the Catholic Church's most notorious paedophiles, abusing over 4 decades. By the time 2 of his victims were interviewed and sworn to secrecy by the then Father Brady for a church inquiry in 1975, Smith was already known in church circles as a serial abuser and rapist.
Brendan Smith was known to have abused in Rome whilst he was over as a young priest. He was sent home from there in disgrace. He was sent home from the United States in the 60s in disgrace for abusing children. He abused children when from 1952 at Kilnacrod Abbey. So all of this was known to the authorities at the Abbey. The question is, when the tribunal listened to the testimony of these 2 young children in 1975, did nobody bring forward that information that we knew Brendan Smith was an abuser?
The Cardinal has defended his role in the church inquiry, which ordered him removed from priestly duties, an order not implemented by the bishops. As a result, Smith went on to abuse for another 2 decades after the inquiry.
He doesn't seem to have acted in the way that we would now say would have been the better way to act, be more proactive. He acted proactive. He acted system whereby he was a secondary school teacher who also happened to be qualified in canon law, was called upon to take a deposition with a view to rendering Brendan Smith no longer capable of doing evil under the guise of a churchman.
Father Brady was 36 at the time. He wasn't a young, innocent, priest. He was an experienced priest, and he heard young people tell him the horrific tale about how they were raped or sexually abused by Brendan Smith, and he seemed to be able to divorce that human feeling into just recording the facts on a piece of paper and passing them on to the bishop and letting the bishop make the next decisions and having nothing more to do with it. I find it astonishing that he wasn't moved in some way to think that maybe I should go to the police, or maybe I should drive them to the police. Instead, they had the oath of secrecy to bury the whole thing and keep it quiet.
Victims say that the oath of silence compounded the secrecy imposed by the abuser, and it could be a perversion of the course of justice if it was intended to prevent them going to the Gardaí, prompting calls for a Garda inquiry. Today, the Catholic Press Office has clarified the reason for the oath, saying the intention of this oath was to avoid potential collusion in the gathering of the inquiry's evidence.
If they were truly honest about it, they would say before they begin taking the testimony, listen, we're going to take the testimony, what we say here stays with us, unless, of course, you tell us something that is of a criminal nature, and therefore we would have to go to the police, and we would have to take you to, or suggest that you go to the police as well. I don't think they did that. They just assume canon law is good for them and it's good for the people, and therefore it saves everybody any embarrassment of publicity that might cause difficulties.
As a result, victims' groups have called for the Cardinal's resignation.
I think that there's something vengeful about the present approach, which is unhealthy, not only for these people who are being forced out, but I think for the actual victims themselves. I think they won't get any benefit from being so vengeful. I'm not sure that pursuing things that happened 30 years ago and more in a different climate is going to actually help the present climate. I really don't.
It might help the victims.
It might, but I think they're mistaken.
Those who have tried for years to investigate the Church's handling of the Brendan Smith affair say this new information about the Cardinal's knowledge marks an important turning point.
They've lied all along about abusing priests, and they've lied about what their knowledge is of Brendan Smith. That story has yet to emerge, and thankfully I think this is the beginning of the end, because the trickle-down effect of this revelation by Cardinal Brady will help get to the truth.
But Dr. Brady's supporters say that despite his ill-fated position in the past, he now has a vital role to play in the Church's recovery.
It's a very important moment. To tell you the truth, I don't mainly see the Church in terms of authority anyway. I think authority is vastly overplayed. I think it would be good if it diminishes the sense of authority, but we still need pastoral leadership. And I think we would lose a good pastoral leader if we lost Sean Brady. I'm not prepared to say that he is unworthy to be the cardinal of my church, even if he made an error in that case, provided he recognises the error and moves on from it. I would like to have a converted sinner as my bishop.
Father Pat Rogers there finishing Una Smith's report. Well, up until now, the Catholic Archbishop of Dublin, Diarmuid Martin, has remained silent on this latest controversy. But tonight he broke that silence. I spoke to him, surrounded by journalists, as he headed into an ecumenical service in Dublin. Were you shocked when you heard the latest revelations about Cardinal Brady?
I don't know the full details of the revelation, and I'd be very careful. There may be aspects of it which I don't know about.
Were you aware of them, Archbishop, until the weekend?
No.
Are you
they were never
disappointed you weren't told about them?
One of the difficulties is we have to find a way in which information gets out from everybody, and that everybody gets the information out in the same way and understands it in the same way.
But Archbishop, the bottom line is, I suppose, Brendan Smith went on for 18 years after that meeting that Cardinal Brady had with those two children and abused countless other children, destroyed their lives.
I don't know when Brendan Smith began, and I don't know when he stopped. But what I'm hearing is you're talking about, here's a man who was abusing for 30, 40 years.
And for 18 years after Cardinal Brady, though, had that meeting.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
That Brendan Smith was not stopped by who had the power to stop him. When you look at he belonged to the extraordinary serial pedophile.
But should Cardinal Brady, Archbishop, have stopped him?
Somebody should have stopped him.
Should he have gone to the police himself at that time, Cardinal Brady?
That I don't know, because I don't know the details of things. That's up to him to explain.
But
I never tell people either to resign. I never say people should stay. I ask for accountability, and resigning is a personal decision.
Were you ostracised by your colleagues down here, the other bishops, the people in your church? Did they cut you off? Did they turn their back on you, Archbishop Martin?
No, I don't see that. I do things my own way, which is may not please everybody. But in no way was I ostracised. But I have to maintain also my own independence of thought, and what I'm trying to do above all is I'm listening to what people are saying in the parishes. Last night we had a good discussion on this, but what people want to know is they want the truth to come out, and people who've come to me have supported me for doing that.
Finally, what would you say to the victims of Brendan Smith, who went on to be abused after Cardinal Brady had those meetings with those children, whose lives are destroyed? What message can you give them as the Archbishop?
Well, all I'd say is Brendan Smith should have been stopped from the very first time it was known that he was abusing.
Archbishop Diarmuid Martin speaking to us earlier in central Dublin. I'm now joined here in studio by Gary O'Sullivan, editor of the Irish Catholic, Patsy McGarry from the Irish Times, and from New York by Helen McGonigal, who was one of those people abused by Brendan Smith. First of all, Helen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Can you just maybe spell out for people the impact that that abuse has had both on your life and the life of your family?
Well, yeah, I was abused by Brendan Smith starting at age 6, and my sister my sister's abuse started when she was approximately age 11. And what I can say about the impact to myself and my sister is it was devastating. It destroyed our family. I lost my sister to a fatal drug overdose in 2005 when she was 48 years old because she was suffering with depression as a result of the abuse. So this kind of abuse at the hands of somebody like a monster like Father Brendan Smith has a lifelong impact, and it destroyed my family.
Yeah, and to be fair, I suppose